All right. Hi, everyone. I'm Dave Rubenstein, editor-in-chief of SD Times, and I'm here with Elizabeth Hendrickson, vice president of R&D data at Pivotal, and Mark Imbriaco, who is the director of platform architecture at Pivotal. I know you both gave talks, and Elizabeth, yours was more focused on data and DevOps and breaking those silos down and being able to get the data where you need it, when you need it. So maybe you can tell us a little bit about your talk and some of the points you were making.
Sure. So one of the big ironies is that although data is a more and more important part of software development these days, like there is no substantive system that doesn't have some data and probably some pretty deep algorithms at its core. It turns out that the people who are specialists in data are still kind of off in a silo in a lot of organizations, and that's a huge problem. And so a lot of what I'm talking about is how to break down those silo walls and embrace your data friends. And it turns out that there are some things. Right before we started, we were talking about how data is challenging, and it's sufficiently challenging that a number of people kind of go, oh, that's just hard, so I'm not even going to try. We'll just leave that over there, and I'll deal with the stateless stuff because that's way easier to apply DevOps patterns to. I would argue it's actually we freak ourselves out a little bit. Yes, it's hard, and there are established patterns that we've learned in the DevOps world that we can totally apply to data. It sometimes requires a little bit extra work to apply those. But if we do that and we take a balanced team approach, then we can reap all of the wonderful DevOps benefits with the addition of the data science and the data engineering that we have to bring into the fold for today's modern applications.
Interesting. So,
I think it's interesting, right? So I said data's hard, and I think you're right. The more I think about it, it's not so much that it's hard. I think we use hard as a placeholder for high consequence, right? Losing data is a horrific incident. Having a service outage for 5 minutes is not a horrific incident. If my stateless service goes down for a few minutes, it's not as scary. So data's a little bit scarier inherently, just because there's this thing that you worry about losing. And if you've done operations for any amount of time, or have done data work for any amount of time, that's your existential fear is I'm going to lose the data.
right.
Yeah, totally. But here's the irony. What DevOps teaches us is that if we want safety, then we have to lean into all of these practices. And so data, it's actually even more important that we take these practices to data.
Yeah, if it's scary, you need to do it more.
Right, exactly. If it hurts, do it more. Exactly. Yeah.
Well, some people say, and rightfully so, that the data is that's the money.
Sure,
that's where everything is. Yep. So of course you're going to want to be careful with it and make sure it's secure and make sure you're doing the right things, which almost sounds like it's contradictory to DevOps, but you can tell us why it isn't.
Well, see, that's the irony, right? If we aim for perfection, then the speaker this morning, Dr. Deckers, was talking about how if you are trying to have a completely incident-free work environment, then you're setting yourself up for a much bigger cataclysmic kind of event. So if you want to create true safety, then aiming for recovery over perfection, so being able to recover, is way more important than enforcing so much change control that now you're just locked in. And if something goes bad, you're just completely toast.
Well, and DevOps optimizes for that. DevOps optimizes for reliability by driving small changes, by focusing on retrospective learning, by iterating, by kind of all these agile processes that we use in software development, applying those to the operational world gives us a lot more safety and gives us a lot more opportunity to learn. So instead of making this big DDL change and this big data load at the end of a quarter, you do that on Tuesday.
Right.
And you're much safer because you're not doing the big change. I'm adding a column to that table now. I'm not completely changing the structure of my database.
Interesting. So you spoke about really more observations about what's happening in the enterprise DevOps world. So what have you seen?
Yeah, so the talk I gave was sort of comparing lessons that I've learned working at a lot of at-scale enterprise technology companies, so GitHub, Heroku, DigitalOcean, and others. And
so you can't keep a job, is what you're saying.
Well, I mean, there's a lot of fun things out there to learn, right? So
no, there are.
So yeah, I guess I can't keep a job.
No, he's keeping this one.
I am kidding. No, it's a good. It's a good one. So there's a lot of things you learn, and my thesis last year, I gave a keynote last year on this topic, was that the lessons that you learn in that world can be applied. And this year was I right? And what have I seen since I joined Pivotal 7 months ago? And sort of I describe my job at Pivotal as a choose your own adventure job, where I get to go and visit with customers and learn what they're doing and find out the challenges they've had and the successes they've had and give them advice and talk about how things map and be surprised by the amazing things they're doing. So I'm super excited about enterprise DevOps, and I've been saying this for the last 3 years since I've been coming. The first time I just lucked into it, I was in town and Gene said, you should come hang out. So, okay, I'll come hang out. And I was blown away because everyone's so engaged and really wants to do the right things. But they've got this sense of learned helplessness, like they're somehow inferior to the startup developers, and it's just not true. In fact, they're skipping entire generations of technical debt that the startup community incurred along the way, and they're doing things I didn't expect them to be able to do. So it's super fun.
Well, very interesting. All right. So, Elizabeth, let me ask you. So, what would be the number one takeaway from your presentation today about breaking down the silos and getting more integration between the data and the operations and the development side?
I think the number one takeaway that I hope people get is that we have to bring data into the fold and consider it part of the scope of the balanced team. Really hug the data people and keep them close and make it part of the scope of what we think we're delivering.
Right. Interesting. And takeaway?
Sure. I think for me, you have to go back to first principles and think about what problem am I trying to solve, and then don't convince yourself that you can't, right? Because you can. These problems aren't insurmountable. You back up to what's the core thing that we're trying to solve for. You have adult conversations and you do it. And there's no reason you can't, no matter how big you are, no matter how bad your compliance regime is. And we've got customers that span as far down the compliance track as you want to go, and we see them doing amazing work. So you can do it.
Excellent. Mark Imbriaco and Elizabeth Hendrickson from Pivotal, thank you both for your time.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for chatting with us. Enjoy the rest of your conference.
Thanks.
Okay, we'll see you next time.